Hey everybody, this is Erman Brody. Thank you so much for tuning in. As many of you may have seen on my Instagram, I am a new Justice Ambassador for Prison Fellowship. So I am into learning about prison reform, criminal justice reform. So even though I work in the entertainment industry, I like to dive into these other things such as prison reform and criminal justice reform. So today we have with us Osigah Kahku. Hopefully I said your name right, sir. Osigah
Yeah.
Kahku. Osigah is a political commentator and advocate of conservative values. He is best known for advocating for the First Step Act, which was signed into law rather in 2018, right, by President Trump. So, pleasure to speak with you, sir. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's a great day to be alive. A lot of great things in store. And a great day to be American every day I wake up.
That's a really great introduction. We don't hear that nowadays. So, I'm gonna lay it out there up front. A lot of my audience, a lot of my audience is 50-50. So there's a lot of liberals, a lot of conservatives. So I'm gonna lay it out there that a lot of people watching right now may hate me for this, just because Osigah is conservative and because he did support the First Step Act with Donald Trump. I'm all about facts, guys. I don't care about opinions, so that's why I'm doing this. I personally am a fan of prison reform, so that's what we're talking about today, right? So Osigah, it's great to have you here, sir. You're from North Carolina, right? Or you're
Yeah,
in
North
North Carolina
Carolina.
right now,
From
and you're
North
currently
Carolina.
campaigning.
Yeah, North Carolina, born and raised. I was working on a few campaigns. That's kind of what I do. But now I'm say a little more. Yes, working on campaigns, but more working on issues that I care about a lot more. Such as of course prison reform, pro-life issues, and economic issues, and things to do with small business. So a plethora of things.
Okay, fantastic. We'll dive into all that, but like I mentioned earlier, the reason why I want to talk to you was about prison reform and the First Step Act. So before we get into all that, let's get to know you as a person, get to know your political views, how you came to be, why you are conservative. Because, like I said, many people out there may go, "Wait, you're black. What are you doing as a
Hmm.
conservative? What are you doing as a Trump supporter?" So let's dive into that stuff first before we go into prison reform. So I think I heard in previous interviews with you that there were certain moments in 2012 and 2016 where you kind of there's a switch that went off in your brain and you were swayed a certain way. So if we can just go back into your political history, if you will, and talk about how you came to be.
All right, so no problem. So, I grew up in North Carolina in Greensboro, which is it's pretty blue. You grow up always thinking, Democrat good, Republican bad, and a racist and white and whatnot. So that's the way I was growing. I was raised up throughout, whether it was elementary school, middle school, and high school. And I do remember a few here and there that were Republican that I knew that were black, but they were like maybe an uncle or some weird person or two, and but I would always see them as brave, but I wouldn't see them as on the right on like right. I would see them more as wrong but brave, because of what was thought to be popular and acceptable in society. So let's fast forward to college days. College is very liberal. It's very Democrat friendly, and a lot of people. That's when you're developing, even your brain and your thoughts and your views, and it's easily able to focus your hate or your anger to a specific entity or social class or type of person. Especially when let's say the media or there's other influences such as family, friends, and just people that you spend time with. So let's get to 2012, right? So my family is traditionally Democrat, but we're devout Catholics and as far as religious and Christian. So I would say we had a lot of conservative values, um, but we were Democrat. Like we voted for Obama, mostly voted for Hillary. So come around, let's say 2012, the DNC, Democrat National Convention, was in Charlotte. I remember I was watching it with my father, and they had a vote to vote God out of the bylaws, and that was it for my dad. That was when that day he said, "Oh, I'm leaving the Democratic Party," and he was out. Not saying that he went to the Republican Party, he just left the party in general. So he probably registered as an independent or an affiliate or whatnot. So I remember seeing that, but I was young, so I was still with the Democrat Party. and I was still just voting Democrat by default. So 2016 comes around. Um, my family, we started a home care business, home care agency, and we were thinking that with Democrat policies such as what Hillary was mentioning with the healthcare, that we would get more money and we would it would be good for business pretty much. And so we were what you would call shareholders. Now the thing with home care agencies and hospitals and things like that, it's basically you send the bill to the government with a one payer system, which happens today with people with Medicaid. You send the bill to the government, so you can sometimes even exaggerate the bill, up the bill, because going to the government, and you'll probably still make that money. That's why a lot of people, they get over like with the government contracts and things like that. Same reason why they are so quick to diagnose COVID, because you get, I forgot how many thousands you get per COVID patient.
Okay.
So of course that shows why there's an incentive to diagnose people with COVID. Um, so that's just one of the best examples right now. So with that being said, my family was like the family that we would, my aunt would donate and even rent out the vans that would drive people to the polls and things like that. So we were heavy on that. And I do remember listening to the media's narrative of Trump being a racist and Trump being so terrible and he's so mean. And I would listen to that because it was popular culture. But on the other hand, the businessman side of me, the conservative side of me, understood that why Trump, got his tax cuts and how smart it was. And I understood, Hillary's dealings with Haiti and, the whole email thing. So in the debates, I would get kind of mad when Trump, would make the good points. I had that, that Trump hate, that Trump derangement syndrome because of, the way the media was pushing him. Now, I even remember when I went to vote, I looked at Trump's name on the ballot and I saw red in my eyes and I picked Hillary but the thing is the other everything else on the ballot I voted for, like there was like referendums. I voted on the conservative side. Like even in my city we had a thing where with bonds, so at house bonds, where you would tax homeowners more for something, and I voted against that because I'm like, well, we don't want homeowners to move. You need homeowners in a community that are invested in the community. But that was a very, very Republican conservative argument, that nobody else was on. So
Okay.
I was voting for that. Everything against like the whole like saying, oh, take that and build community centers. Like I was definitely against that. So I had a lot of conservative, ideals in me. So fast forward, that election night, seeing Hillary losing, but I went to sleep. I was like, there's no way she's gonna lose. The media told us that there was a 92% chance that she
Right.
would win. I woke up the next day, saw Trump won. I was like, wow. I was even a little bit pissed going to bed. I was, pissed like probably any Democrat or liberal was. And I was surprised. Like we were all surprised. So I did research on why that happened, and even prior to that, prior to election day, I remember there was one time when I saw a picture on Facebook, and it showed Trump's parents in KKK clothes, and Trump was like, hugging them and like in a picture with them. So that got me really angry, and I was so angry. I was like, wow, is this really true? So then I searched the image, I searched the image about it, and it turned out it was a photoshopped image of them in KKK clothes. So that's when the light bulb in my head was like, maybe this is not true. That it's somebody they're painting, Trump in this light, maybe because he's a Republican or they have something against him. So that put the light in me. Now fast forward to that day after election. I know I just did my research and I was like, why did this happen? That's when I realized that there is a world outside of my bubble in the United States. Like so I'm in the city, right? I learned more about, the rural areas, and then I learned for the first time what is called the Rust Belt states.
Okay.
So I learned about the Rust Belt states, the red states, I'm from the South, so I mean I'm familiar with the South, but those Rust Belts and like I learned about how he won Ohio and things like that. Like they were talking about um, how Hillary went to Michigan, and I
Okay.
was in Michigan to visit Niagara Falls a few years back, and I remember seeing Motor City in Detroit and all that, and they said that she went to Michigan around the same time Trump did, and she was talking about LGBT rights. thinking that was the popular trending topic right now. That's what everybody wanted to hear. Not realizing she was in Michigan. Then Trump went, I think, came next and talked about creating jobs, in Motor City, which made sense. And I was like, okay, that does make a lot of sense. And so that's some. So then after like doing those kind of research, it doesn't mean I was full on, for Trump or whatever. But I was like, you know what, I'll give this guy a chance. I'll be mature. I'll give him a chance, to see what he does with the nation, because he is talking about, cutting taxes, even cutting the gift tax, which is they tax your inheritance that you leave for your kids. Like that's wild to me. So I was like, I'll give him a chance. I see what he's saying and stuff. So fast forward, I'm in college, and then I kind of take a break for a semester or two. I get into business. I start focusing more on my family's business, and I get into sales. So that sales summer, I made a few dollars, I made some money, and I liked how the feeling of, being in control of, like, let's say, a business, and actually, grinding and stuff. And so I came back home that summer, and I remember I was in my family's house. I was in my parents' house, didn't like it so much, and I went to community college, didn't do so well at first. Then I went back to my 4-year college,
Okay.
didn't do so well again. So I left, but then I started getting more into other businesses and making my own way and stuff like that. So I guess that was the more American way or American dream or whatever. And then one day, the debt collector for my student debt, he just kept calling, kept calling, kept calling. So that was why I was just saving money and stuff like that. And then I remember seeing articles and, like, different, like, readings I was reading, that, like, how, like, college may be a scam, people going to debt and things like that. So then one day I got fed up with the guy calling, and I asked him how much I owed, and we worked it out. And I wrote a big fat check. I don't know, it was 13, 15, or 20,000 between
Okay.
that. I wrote that check, sent it to them, and I never looked back. It was debt free, and I just kept working from that. And that's what, like, started putting the conservative ideals into me a little bit. Also, I met more friends that were more Christian based, and they read the Bible more. And I saw that the Bible was just a great, besides religion, it was just a great book on living your way of life and things like that. So, I started getting into that. And then one day I was working a job, and I was in the break room, and I saw people, and we were all black, in the break room. And I saw a guy, he was an older guy, gentleman, and he was looking at TV. Trump was on the TV making some speech or whatever. Trump was talking about the unemployment rate, going down, and things like that. And the guy was shaking his head. Now, me, I'm somebody I like to listen, So I was like, why is he shaking his head? And then I looked. I saw a lady behind me. She was eating her lunch, and she was like, I don't know what's wrong with that man. And that guy was shaking his hand, like, agreeing with her. But I could tell that that guy was only shaking his head because it was socially acceptable, and he was around that woman. So it was like kind of like he was being controlled by what he thought others wanted to
Got
hear.
you.
So that's when I noticed, like, maybe society and, like, what we are taught to do, we just do that out of compliance and just wanting to fit in and virtual signaling. So then that same night, I came home. I go on Instagram and I see black kids in MAGA hats. And I'm like, whoa, this is brave. Like, then again, it reminds me of one uncle that I had that was, Republican. And I was like, whoa, this is very brave. This is really weird. So I reach and I see them, like, they're getting a lot of hate in the comments, and they're standing up for themselves. Like, they're actually responding to almost every single comment. They're responding graciously. Sometimes if they have to respond, they basically reciprocated the energy. And I was like, okay, cool. So I reached out to a few of them. I was like, hey, y'all, I'm proud of you guys for sticking up for yourselves. That's very brave of y'all. Not saying I was Republican or conservative or Trump or anything like that.
Right. Okay.
I was just still in the middle. And one of them was like, oh, cool, thanks. Would you like to be a part of our group? So I was like, no, they said their group chat. So I was like, cool. So they added me in. I was just expecting just to go on that group chat and say, hey guys, and I like what you guys are, I like that you guys are standing up for yourselves. Keep on. That's cool. Stand on your own 2 feet. Peace. Not so much. I got in that group chat, and they seem pretty cool people. and just became friends with them, and I kind of, adopted the conservative values. I saw it was pretty cool, and all these figures, and not knowing that, eventually they told me about a group that they were part called Turning Point USA, and so with that, I started getting acquainted with Turning Point a little bit, and people from Turning Point learned a little bit about me, and I met some figures from Turning Point. And then one day, I also mentioned that while I was in business, I had business advisors, and one of my business advisors, he went to prison for tax evasion. Now, this is not the tax evasion that is a typical somebody was just, not paying their taxes and wanted to ignore it. He had recently got into that high tax bracket of, like, I guess when you owe millions or whatever, where you don't know how to handle that, like where you don't know how to pay it, what type of firms to hire, because it's not like your regular sit down with one accountant and you just tally up, what you spent in gas and what you spent at the grocery store and your income. Like you got, we're talking millions here.
Yeah, it's
So
a lot of money.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, it was great that he reached that point in his life, but he just didn't know how to handle that. So the thing is, when the IRS, comes for somebody, let's say they owe a lot, the IRS is going to speed up the one who owes the most. It just makes sense. So by the time he was even able to figure out a lot of things, court came to him so fast that he was in court, and he just had to go over the proceedings. And by the time he figured something out, they were already sentencing him. So I felt that was a little unfair. I felt that was a little unfair and stuff like that. I visited him and in prison and all that stuff. So that got me in my head thinking of prison reform. And me, I'm somebody who I'm a law-abiding citizen. Like I'm like, hey, if you did the crime, do the time, no problem. Especially if you did a heinous crime. Like I grew up, not I yeah, I would say I grew up in the hood, but I was, privileged in a sense to have a roof over my head, two-parent household and stuff like that. But I did go to, the neighborhood schools and all
Yeah.
that, as far as that. And I had friends, who did go to, prison. Like,
Okay.
I always say I went to school with more felons than doctors, as far as
Oh,
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I never once really said, oh, free this guy, he free him or whatever. I'm all for it. Like if you committed the crime, you go to prison. So, but I didn't deny that there was probably a need for prison reform, because I see movies, you see documentaries of how prisons are, but like nonetheless, they are, people did commit the crimes. Now, fast forward, somebody from Turning Point reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I remember you mentioned that you had a friend or an advisor that went to prison. Would you like to help us out by advocating for the First Step Act? There's a prison reform act called the First Step Act." So I was like, "Okay, cool. Um, I don't know what you guys want me to do." So all I did basically was I was what you would call like probably somebody who preps or uh, gives pointers to the lobbyists.
Okay.
So while Turning Point was lobbying in DC, I was just giving a pointer to a few of them. And I was just giving them tips on like what I went through, like as far as my business advisor, what I remember the experience to me, like how it was visiting in prison and all that stuff. And so that's I mean I helped prep with that, and then I remember they got through to Senator Ted Cruz. I remember Candace spoke to some other senators and a lot of other different people, and eventually they told me that, oh, it passed some days later. And then another few days later, it reached the president's desk. He signed it. They were all like, happy about it. And then I think the next day or two, or I think around February, some people were telling me, check my email, check my email, check my email. I didn't see anything there. So they said, oh, check your spam. Check my spam. And it's an invitation to the White House.
Okay.
And so I look and, I'm like, okay, cool. Should I take it or should I not? Because remember, I was on neither side at the point, but I lived in a liberal, Democrat area. So I was like, well, what would people say? And all, and blah, blah, blah. And then,
What if they cancel me?
yeah, 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 that too. How would that fare off? So, and eventually one of my friends was like, look, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And I thought the same too. I was like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, who gets an actual invitation to the White House? So I took it. I booked a train, to try go up to DC, and I go up. had my suit on, and I at the White House, which I've only been there for field trips in the past when I was little. So go in and go through Secret Service, and I get there. I see a bunch of political commentators and conservative voices such as Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk, Brandon Tatum. I meet them for the first time. They're all pretty cool, and then um, we all gather, for a speech, and out comes President Trump. And what I noticed was that his speech was tailored towards the Black community. The event was celebrating Black History Month, and it was so tailored to the Black community that it was pretty amazing. And I was like, wow, the media talks all this about him, but he was like really bringing it home. On top of that, it was like a coincidence. One of the hometown heroes from my hometown, who was in the Greensboro sit-ins, was speaking. So he spoke next, and stuff like that. And it was great to hear him speak. And like after that, Trump, he went out, shook hands, he shook my hand and a few others. I think he signed a few hats and whatnot. And the guy, he came off as like a regular person, like nonetheless, of course, wealthy person, but he came off as somebody who wasn't fake. So he would show his emotions. He was honest. You get what I'm saying? Not like the regular politician or somebody who was smiling in your face. To the point where, like if somebody in the crowd or somebody would shout it out something, he would respond emotionally how he really felt. So which I noticed that wasn't. Of course, that's not a perfect trait, but like let's say he felt mad about something, he would like turn around, like to the point where even Secret Service was pushing him, saying, "Hey, we got to go, Mr. President, we got to go." Which reminds me, it correlates to why he reacted how he did in the debate, which I don't think is a bad thing, that he's just being himself, being honest, because like in business, you got to be stern, you got to be firm, stuff like, but in politics, you can lie, you can literally lie your whole career, so that's what's new for Trump, that he's not a politician. That's why people liked him and elected him, and that's what I learned later. Also, the media, they told us 92% chance Hillary will win, and things like that. So that's when I started learning that the media is pretty is lies a lot. And another thing too is, growing up, the media and society would paint different people in a bad light. Like right now, it's cool to be Black, it's cool to be African, it's cool to be minority right now. But the way the media would paint like us back in the day was falsehood. Like I always ask people, like, think about this, like I'm from Africa, right? Growing up, like in school, people would literally think Africa was just safaris, jungles, huts, extremely underdeveloped, things like that. And I would hate that, because that's what the media would push to them in movies and news and documentaries. And even like, let's say, the Black community, they would push the Black community as just, dancers, just entertainers,
Right.
sports people, or thugs, or criminals. They wouldn't push the doctors. They wouldn't push, all the, like, a lot of the Black excellence, even from things like, entrepreneurship to, like academics, and so as far as that, so everybody has a experience with how the media portrays their people, mostly it's people. So that's when
I'm
I
brown.
learned,
I get it. I'm Asian. I get it.
yeah, that's
Get
when I
it.
learned not to look into the media. So that's what, and so then when I was getting home, like back then I didn't have too much money like to book flights or whatever, so I took a train to DC. So leaving DC, leaving the White House in that morning, took a train, hopped, it was in Union Station, hopped in. The train, the service was spotty, so for 6 hours I didn't have any internet service. Before I left, I posted a picture, like I posted a post on Instagram about the White House and all that stuff. So I had no service all the way down to North Carolina. When I get back home, I turn on, the internet, the Wi-Fi comes on, and my phone is just flooded. And it is flooded with friends, some family, some close friends, and a lot of them, I was getting a lot of hate from them, a lot of animosity. Some were like, "Oh, cool, you went to the White House." Just a lot of stuff, and it kind of went, I guess, say a little viral and stuff. And then and then conservatives were like, "Whoa, that's pretty dope, proud of you, whatever." And like different people were like, "Okay, you went to the White House, that's great." And then people just stared, bashing Trump, bashing Trump, and some people were just, calling me coon and all that stuff. So then that's when I first was introduced to, I guess the nasty side of politics, or the left, or what Democrats can be like. And I never thought that was, that was them. That's what the party represented. And so eventually I got a little bit more outspoken how I was against raising the minimum wage to the $15 an hour minimum wage, and I explained it thoroughly, that would lose jobs actually, uh, and um, and things like that. So then that's basically how my conservative journey started, and then eventually I went on to work on different campaigns and manage different campaigns, and then also working on President Trump's campaign for a while, and now I'm more work on pro-life issues, and the first, still working on the First Step Act,
Okay.
which will progress into the Second Chance Act, which is for states. uh,
Gotcha.
yeah,
And we'll get into the
yeah,
second chance act as well, because I do want to focus on the First Step Act first, because it does go along with your journey. So 2016 happens,
yeah.
2018. We're now at 2018, where President Trump signs into the law the First Step Act. And the First Step Act is the act. A little bit about the act. The act was the culmination of a bipartisan effort to improve criminal justice outcomes, as well as to reduce the size of the federal prison population, while also creating mechanisms to maintain public safety. So talk about your involvement in advocating for it, and how did you get it? Obviously, you already talked about it getting signed, but
Yeah.
afterwards, how did you advocate for it, and what are you still doing with the First Step Act?
All right, so basically, I looked into that app and what it was proposing, and I liked it. One thing that I liked about it was that it was bipartisan, and that even like I think it was introduced or helped push too as well by Cory Booker, and then a few other Democrats as well. It passed, I think, anonymous, like with great support from the House of Representatives and the Senate. So I like that, like both sides were
Yeah,
on.
if I'm not mistaken, it was Cory Booker on the left, but also Tim Scott on the right, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Senator Scott as well, and I liked not only not it wasn't a bill full of fluff. It made sense because one, the recidivism rate is so high because somebody goes back into a society that they weren't a part of. Like ever since they got into prison, times have changed. The world has changed. It's like almost like being in a coma or being in a time capsule. So and it's hard to get a job because you're a felon and all that stuff thing. So what the program does as well is it makes sure you're ready to return to society. So they have, I think, a little bit of mini classes where they teach you about how society's changed. Also, they equip you with an ID card, a state ID, and then they help you apply for jobs and get a job upon release. And so that helps, because you have a purpose and you have something to do, somewhere to go, upon release. So it's not just like releasing you out and then you come back in. It's something that helps you. So I was advocating it for it on mainly that part. Also eventually does save government and our tax dollars money because we're housing less people in jail, and we open up jail for people with more violent crimes that deserve to be there. I mean, sorry, the prison. So it's a really great program. I would say all around. Now it's not perfect. A lot of people like to criticize it, saying we have let out people with violent crimes and people that are very dangerous, which is true. I've seen, but it's a very small number. Most people, that have let out non-violent, they've even gone on to get pardoned, and it's been a very great, program. And I know this because I have friends in prison, and they've told me that people are released each and every day from federal prison because of that. Their lawyers will be like, "Oh, you might have another chance. There's this thing called First Step Act that Trump put into place," and they worked with it, and things like that. And prison reform is really, it's a really noble cause. I would say, so I did like that. And now these days, I'm not too much in that sector, but the next I say the next step is what they people like to call this the second step or second chance act.
Second chance, yeah.
Yeah, second chance act, and that one is with state. Now the first step act is with federal prison mainly, so nonviolent. It's more of a federal thing. But the state is the second step. So the thing is, with the second step, I always tell people take that up with your governor and your state. If you want to see that in the state, which a lot of people, a lot of governors and senators and lawmakers, they're picking it up. It's picking up some good momentum, which I do like. Um, and so that's, I guess, the next part of it.
Sure, sure. And this is an old statistic, but I saw in 2018 that 91% of the inmates who were freed by the First Step Act were actually black. So talk about that and how is what if I, for lack of better phrasing, when it comes to releasing prisoners, are minorities is that a focus for the First Step Act?
Well,
How does that work out?
I think it's just a matter of probability.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, the prison population, I believe that African Americans make up 80% of the prison population. So it makes sense, most group in the prison population. So most likely who you release probably be more of them. So that it just makes sense. I don't think that it's a tailored towards race thing, but it does help out the African American race since we do make 80% of the population.
Right. And so for this act, which crimes specifically is it tailored towards? Because I know, you know, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, like
We
marijuana use
Yeah, we.
is which specific crimes would you say
I'll say weed. I'll say
weed?
certain
Okay.
weed, you're caught with some
Yeah,
weed or something federal, and I'll say that's what I'll say. Yeah, I'll say
for
that's what
sure.
it's there too. That's
Yeah.
that's all the people that I've met it was weed and drugs. Now, of course, if you were slinging kilos and you're a drug lord, I mean El Chapo's not falling under the the First Step Act. But the mother who was maybe sold a ounce or a gram or two or whatever, she's it will apply to her, such as Alice, I believe that you mentioned, and a few others.
Absolutely. Now, you mentioned earlier that First Step Act. It is called First Step, so there's room for growth. It's just like as with any law or any bill signed, there's always room for improvement, right?
Yeah.
So, what's your response to naysayers to the First Step Act? Because I read somewhere in once again 2018, sentencingproject.org said that while they stated the accomplishments of the act, they also stated that it does not provide the systemic change necessary to undo the harm caused by decades of mass incarceration at the federal level,
Yeah.
fueled by mandatory minimums and federal prosecutors focus on extreme punishments for street level crime. So, what is your response to those who have a negative outlook on the First Step Act?
Well, first thing is first, we need to look on the bright side. It's better to do something than nothing. Uh, and two, like no plan, no law, no society is perfect. Um, and as far as the immense, as far as punishment, yes, prisons are tough, and that's something that will probably never change. I mean, life is not always fair. Now, the critics, when somebody criticizes, I always prefer or really appreciate if they can come up with a solution juxtaposed with that criticism. You know, there's a lot of things you can say, but a lot of people that I see that it boils down to is that either they're just anti-Trump or they're just anti that it was conservatives bragging about it or Trump bragging about it. That's kind of what I see more that it comes down to these days.
Yeah.
But as far as prison reform, like there's some people like even on the extreme side of any issue where some prison reform people think that they should just open up all the cells, let everybody out, or make sure prison is like the Norway prisons where it's like a 5-star hotel or something like that,
Oh yeah,
which is not.
I've seen pictures.
Yeah,
I've seen pictures of Norway
which is
prisons.
not it's not possible. I
Yeah.
don't think in the U.S. Like some people, they don't care. Like even like let's say the pro green global warming movement. Some of the people in that movement so extreme that they're not going to stop until everybody is cycling to work. So I mean, there's certain things like that. So there's always people on that side, extremists on every side. So, but what I tell them is like, look, life's not perfect. We can still keep working on these laws, and that's the beauty of our country, that we can amend, we can make laws, we can have programs, and if you feel that's a problem, like that's the great thing about Trump. This thing, it wasn't necessarily a Republican thing or a conservative thing. Like it was really probably even arguably started by Democrats. But Trump actually listened. He does listen. If a deal, he's a deal maker. If the deal makes sense, if it adds up and it's nothing bad or hurting or deceitful, he'll sign it in. And that's just what he did with this act.
Sure. Sorry, guys. My contact was giving me issues there for a second, so I was like rubbing it in front of you. Um, but so we go from first step to second chance. So if we talk about second chance, I know you briefly talked about it before, but talk about what second chance is and how that came into play in the last few years.
So from what I know, and I don't know too much about the Second Chance Act because they're very state by state. States are different. That it's basically just the continuation of that program, but it's within the state level. So first step is federal. So I guess that's with your federal prisons and federal crimes, and the Second Chance Act is with your state. So I guess take that up with your governor. I can all I can say with that as far as that.
So for someone who advocates for prison reform, where do you think we should go next? What still has to be done? What still has to be done on the policy side of things, but also maybe in prison? Where do you see change?
So I would say, uh, I mean, yes, prison is very dangerous on both sides. I would say put a little bit more funding into, of course, security. Like, yes, prison should be a punishment, yeah, but the safety issues that I do see that go on there, like as far as like let's say prison rape or somebody getting stabbed or the violence, something needs to be done to that. Now, I'm not somebody, that's not my skill set. I'm not somebody who's worked in a prison or anything like that, but I do hear these stories, and like even like correctional officers, their safety too, like they're not as safe, and plus like also hear that they're not they feel that they're not paid enough for those certain things,
I've
and
seen Orange is the New Black. They get killed. I've seen them get killed.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, well, I've heard, so I think maybe that's the next step within the prison as far as that, um and also helping them as well as maybe regain into life, like when they go back into the real world, as far as housing, as far as knowing that there's hope, um kind of combating also the institute, them being institutionalized,
Okay.
as far as that. So many different things, but also it needs to be reasonable. You know, um, it needs to be reasonable. It shouldn't be costing the whole budget or going over budget. It needs to be reasonable, and um, I would say that as far as in reference to prison reform. But so far so good. I can't complain. I do like the First Step Back. I do like the Second Chance Step Back. There's only so much you can do. People are in prison for a reason. Now there are people who are innocent in prison, but as you and I know, and hearing from others, that's a very small, group. So yeah.
Absolutely. What's next for you? What do you have going on in next year? Maybe in terms of politics, maybe in terms of personal
Mm,
in your personal life. What do you got going on? Anything you're advocating for next?
mm. Basically, right now, I'm trying to help, of course, re-elect President Trump. So focusing on that, focusing on, like different things in politics, more, pro-life issues.
Okay.
I'm ambassador with Blexit, which is the Black Exit, uh,
Oh,
Black
Candace Owens.
Black Exit from groupthink, pretty much. And my goal really is I always explain to people, um, don't with a politician or somebody running for public office, make them earn your vote every time. Don't just have a party think that they're entitled to your vote because on the Democrat side, it's like they always expect to get the black vote, and they always do, because we've always been raised Democrat good, Republican bad, and a lot of communities in general. I would say be more of somebody who listens to both sides of the story. Like I always say, joke and say, if you're listening to a couple, a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or a husband or wife, and you only take the girlfriend side of the story, you're gonna miss out, on some other key facts. Or if you only listen to the boyfriend or husband side of the story, you're gonna miss out on a lot of information. Same with Republicans and Democrats. Like, don't let a Republican tell you what a Democrat is, and don't let a Democrat tell you what a Republican is. Let them hear both sides of their story, and also take out the emotion and the hate. Focus on the fact, focus on the logic, where they're coming from, and make your decision from there. And also be respectful, really respectful of others' opinions and things like that. And that's basically it. Listen to both sides of the story. That's really where I'm going through with this, and also going back into probably entrepreneurship. I also like to talk about that, like as far as conservative values go, saving money, leaving something for your children, sexual discipline, probably pro-life, self-accountability, those things. So same old day, same old, just without the pressure and hype of 2020 politics and all that's going on.
Have it. Thank you so much, sir. Where can folks tune into your? Do you have videos? I mean, do you have your own channel?
Yeah, no YouTube channel.
Okay.
I have a Facebook like page.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm all those are coming. Facebook like page. I have Instagram and a Twitter. All of them you can follow me at Osigah K. So Osigah K. So Osigah K. And I'm on all platforms.
Well, man, it's a pleasure speaking with you. I love hearing other people's perspectives. Whether or not people out there agree with you. It was just a good time to at least hear what you had to say without interruptions, without anyone debating you or arguing with you. So it's a safe space. I applaud you for being open and letting people know how you feel on a politically. So I appreciate you and your time today. Best of luck, man. Hopefully, stay in touch. I do want to learn more about prison reform, so I do want to stay in touch with you and go from there.
Yeah, appreciate you, man.
Man, take care, bud.